We're continuing our study of Sefer Yehoshua, and we are up to Perek Gimel. You'll recall from the Torah itself that Moshe Rabbeinu died on the 7th of Adar, and the Jewish people observed 30 days of Avelut. This is the idea of Shloshim, in which they think about Moshe Rabbeinu, they remember him. And then, on the day that the Shloshim was over, which was the 7th of Nisan, they were told to get ready because after 3 days, 7, 8, 9, on the 10th of Nisan, they will be crossing the Yarden, and they will be beginning their conquest of Eretz Yisrael. So Perek Gimel now begins, V'yashkim Yehoshua baboker. Yehoshua woke up early, the morning of the 9th of Nisan. Vayisu mihashitim, and the Jewish people travel from Shittim v'yavo ad Yarden, and they come to the Jordan River, the banks of the Jordan River. They are east of the Yarden. V'chol b'nei Yisrael, and this is on the 9th. V'yalinu sham terem yavoru, and they spent the night in prayer, in Torah learning, in getting ready before they crossed the Yarden, because this is a momentous occasion. They are entering the holiness of Eretz Yisrael. They need to be prepared, not only militarily, but most importantly, spiritually. Vayhi miktzei shloshes yamim, and now it is at the end of those 3 days. So it's still on the 9th. In other words, it's on the 9th. It's towards the end of that day. Vayavru hashotchim bekerev hamachaneh. The enforcers, the policemen, the gaboim, are passing through the camp, and they are giving the Jewish people necessary information. Vayitzavu es ha'am leimor, and they command the people, Kiroschem eis aron bris Hashem Elokeichem. When you see the Ark of the Covenant, which contains the luchais, that is being carried by the Kohanim Halaviyim nosim oso. Again, the description is not so complete here, but what we're going to see is that the Kohanim are carrying the Aron HaKodesh. When they step into the Yarden, the water splits, and the people are told, when you see the water split after the Kohanim step into the Yarden, that is a sign for you to travel and cross the river. Atem tisu mimkomchem, you will travel from your location, v'halachtem acharav, and you will follow the direction of the Aron. Now let me point out that in the 40 years of the Midbar, when the Mishkan was being moved from place to place, the Aron HaKodesh was not carried by the Kohanim. The Aron HaKodesh was only carried by the tribe of Levi, who were not Kohanim, and in particular the Bnei Kahas. They carried the Aron HaKodesh, Avodas HaKosef. The Rambam in the Sefer HaMitzvos actually says that the halacha in the Torah that only Leviim carry the Aron was only in the generation of the Midbar because there were so few Kohanim. How many Kohanim were there? There was Aaron, and Aaron had 4 sons, Elazar, Isamar, Nadav, and Avihu. Nadav and Avihu died shortly the day that the Mishkan was dedicated, so essentially you had 3 Kohanim, and a little later you had Pinchas, who was a son of Elazar. So because there were so few Kohanim, the Torah put the responsibility of transporting the Aron, which could have been an all-day thing, they traveled all day and sometimes all night, it was given to a subdivision of the tribe of Levi. But once they are coming to Eretz Yisrael after the 40 years, there are many more Kohanim, so the Rambam Shita is that the mitzvah was moving from the Leviim and given to the Kohanim, and the Rambam's Raya is because for Yericho we find the Kohanim carried it. L'maisa, the Ramban is cholek. We don't have time to get into all the technicalities. The Ramban learns that there was no change in the mitzvah. Rather, since all Kohanim are also Leviim, so the Torah says Leviim have to carry the Aron. So sometimes it was done by Kohanim, sometimes it was done by Leviim, but even in the Midbar, theoretically, Kohanim could have carried the Aron. But be it as it may, here, the Kohanim are in fact going to be the ones who are carrying the Aron, and the Shaitrim are informing the people on the 9th, this is the day before the crossing, that when you see the Aron in the Yarden and the water splitting, that is your sign to travel. But Rachok yiyeh beinechem ubeinav ke'alpayim amah. But keep your distance. Be distant from the Aron 2,000 amos. Again, an amma is between 1.5 and 2 feet. Multiply that by 2,000. B'midah, in measurement, al tikravu elav. Do not get too close to the Aron, because again, the Aron HaKodesh is not simply a box. It represents a siman and a sign of the Shekhinah, the divine presence. And the divine presence must be treated with reverence and with awe and with yira and pachad. Just like by Har Sinai, we read in Parshas Yisro that when Hashem gave the Torah, we had to distance ourselves from the mountain because the divine presence was on that mountain. So too the divine presence is on the Aron HaKodesh. So we must distance ourselves. Al payim amah. Al tikravu elav, do not get too close to the Aron, l'man asher tedu es haderech asher telchu ba, in order that you should understand the derech, the way that you must go, ki lo yavartem baderech mitmol shilshom, because this is an unfamiliar trip for you. Again, the commentaries have a little bit of a problem here. I mean, what is so unfamiliar? I mean, granted, Eretz Yisrael is a new land, but they're simply just walk where the dry land is. I mean, there's no unfamiliar road or detour or uncertainty. They simply have to walk in a straight line, and that will get them across. But al pi drush, the pasuk has a much deeper meaning, that this is a new derech, meaning to say, in the lifetime of Moshe Rabbeinu, where you were used to open miracles like the man and the traveling be'er, the well, and the anani hakavod, you had a certain closeness and intimacy with God. In Eretz Yisrael, when you no longer have Moshe Rabbeinu, although Hashem will still be doing miracles for you and will be taking care of you, and there will be a special hashgacha pratis, but you need to also understand that you need to have more of a distance because you no longer have a Moshe Rabbeinu that can create that relationship of familiarity and intimacy. And that's what it means. Keep your distance, because this is not the way things were in the Midbar. So this is the information that the Shotrim gave to the people. Now Yehoshua himself comes and gives them instructions of his own. Vayomer Yehoshua Elohim. Yehoshua tells the nation, this is the 9th of Nisan, His Kadoshu, prepare yourselves, sanctify yourselves, do tshuva, ki machar, tomorrow on the 10th, Yaseh Hashem b'kir bechem niflaot, Hashem is going to do wondrous things. Again, let me just point out that one of Yehoshua's issues, and we saw this even in the first parak of Yehoshua, is Yehoshua is filling the tremendous shoes of Moshe Rabbeinu. The greatest Navi that there ever was, the greatest Navi there will ever be. Imagine how difficult, if not impossible, it would be for people to look at Yehoshua in the same way they looked at Moshe. And in many, many ways, although Yehoshua is not, of course, on the Madrega of Moshe, Hashem has to show in the eyes of the people how great Yehoshua is, and therefore Yehoshua must also perform a miracle of the magnitude of Moshe Rabbeinu. And if Moshe Rabbeinu was able to split the Yam Suf, Yehoshua is able to split the Yarden. So Yehoshua speaks to the people and he says Hashem will do niflaos, wonders, and then Yehoshua speaks to the Kohanim who are going to be carrying the Aron. V'yomer Yehoshua el Kohanim lemor, Yehoshua says to the Kohanim, Se'u es Aron HaBris, carry the Ark of the Covenant that Hashem has between himself and Am Yisrael. Ivru lifnei ha'am, pass before the people. And the Kohanim did so. Vayisu es Aron HaBris, vayelchu lifnei ha'am. So this is already the morning. This is the morning of the 10th. Vayomer Hashem el Yehoshua, Hayom hazeh. This very day, the 10th of Nisan, 33 days after Moshe Rabbeinu died, Ochel gadelcha b'einei kol Yisrael, I will begin to make you great. I will exalt you in the eyes of all of Am Yisrael. Asher yedun, that they will know for sure. Ki kasher hayisi im Moshe, as I was with Moshe Rabbeinu. Eya imach, I will be with you. V'yata titzaves kohanim nosei oren bris lemer, and you shall command the kohanim who are carrying the oren, b'vayachem ad ketzei mei hayardain, when you walk into the Jordan River, b'yardain ta'amodu, stand still. I mean, obviously we don't want the kohanim to cross, because then the water would not be split for everybody else. So you walk into the Yarden, stand still until everybody crosses. So that's Yehoshua's instruction to the Kohanim. And then Yehoshua once again speaks to Bnei Yisrael, Go shuhena, come forward, Vishimu es divrei Hashem Elokeichem, and listen to the words of God. Vayomer Yehoshua, Bezois teidun, this is how you will know, Ki kel chai b'kirvechem, that the everlasting, eternal God, the God that can change all of the laws of nature of heaven and earth, because He created them, is with you. And when you know that Hashem is with you, you will have courage and strength to fight this mighty enemy that would otherwise strike you with terror. And because Hashem is with you, Horesh Yorish Mipnechem, He shall expel the 7 nations of Canaan, fierce, battle-scarred nations. The Canaani, the Chiti, the Chivi, the Prizi, the Girgashi, the Amori, the Yavusi. The 7 fierce nations of Canaan. Hine, Yehoshua is speaking to the people. Aron Abris Adon Kol Haaretz, the Ark of the Covenant of the Master of the world. Over Lifnechem B'Yarden, is crossing into the Yarden in front of you. V'yata, and now, K'chu lachem shnei asor ish mishiftei Yisrael, ish echad l'shavet. And you, the people, are to designate 12 people, 1 man from every tribe of Israel. Now, Pasuk Yud Beis is actually a difficult pasuk, because in Pasuk Yud Beis it doesn't say what these people are supposed to do. Somewhat difficulty, we don't really know their role until later, but I'll get a little ahead of myself. They will be told to pick up stones from the Yarden, which will be erected as a monument on dry land, so that people will remember this miracle. But at this point, Yehoshua simply tells them, designate 12 people. And we'll see later what these 12 people do. V'haya, Yehoshua continues, Kenoach kapos raglei kohanim nosei aron Hashem adon kol haaretz b'mei Yarden, as soon as the feet of the Kohanim hit the waters of the Yarden, meaning they don't have to walk into the middle of the water. As soon as their toes hit the water, Mei hayarden yikareson, the water shall be split. Hamayim hayordim milmala v'yamdu neidachat. So let me just make an obvious point here. The splitting of the Yarden did not really work the same way as the splitting of the Yam Suf. The Yam Suf, the Red Sea, is a sea. And the sea has water on both sides. So there was necessary to be a split. The water was a wall to the right. The water was a wall to the left. According to the Midrashim, there actually were 12 pathways through the sea for each Shevet. With the Yarden, however, the Yarden is a river that moves. It's moving current. So you don't really need the water to split. All you need is for the water to stop on one side. Right? The water stops flowing. And if the water stops flowing, then eventually all the water on the other side of that split will keep on going downstream till you have a channel of dry land through which the Jewish people could cross. So the Yarden was not split into 2. Rather, HaKadosh Baruch Hu simply stopped the flow of the water, and the water kind of accumulated miraculously into a wall. It became a gigantic wall, many miles into the sky, right? The water, because the water had no place to go, it was like a huge invisible dam. There was no physical dam there, but the water was dammed, and then eventually the water on the other side kept on going downstream, thereby creating a channel of dry land. So it is a little different than the Kriyas Yamsuf, and that's why the pasuk says, "Vayamdu neid echad." There was one wall of water that was simply accumulating. Vayehi bin soa ha'am mi'aleim lavor et Yarden v'kohanim nosei ha'aron abris lefnei ha'am. And behold, when the people left their tent and got ready to cross the Yarden, and the Kohanim were in front of them, Uchavo nosei ha'aron ad Yarden, as soon as the nosei ha'aron, the carriers of the Aron, came into the Yarden, v'raglei ha'kohanim nosei ha'aron, and the feet, the toes of the Kohanim who are carrying the Aron, nitpalu, it just got dipped, biktsei hamayim, in a little bit of the water. And this was a time when the Yarden was filled with water, because remember that the month of Nisan, this is the 10th of Nisan, is towards the end of the rainy season in Eretz Yisrael. Right? It's the end of the rainy season that begins in Cheshvan. So the waters were, the river channels were filled with water. Al Kol Gedosav, overflowing the banks. Kol Yemei Katsir, because now is the time of the harvest. Vayamdu hamayim hayordim milmala, and the water that was coming from upstream simply stood still. V'kamu neid echad, and it rose like a huge wall of water. Harchek miod, that went for a very long distance. Bi Adam, from the city of Adam. Adam, interestingly enough, Adam normally means Adam, a man, but Adam is the name of a city, the commentaries say, which is a city next to Sarsan, another well-known city. Again, keep in mind that the Yarden flows from the north to the south. It's even north of Yam Kinneret. It goes into Kinneret, and then it goes down south, and it empties into the Yam HaMelech, the Dead Sea. And Sarsan is a city up north, somewhat near Tiberia. And Hayordim, and the water on the other side was simply going downstream, Al Yam HaRava, till the sea of the desert plain, which is Yam HaMelech, the Dead Sea. Tamu Nichrasu. It stopped flowing. V'ya'am avru neged Yericho, and the people were able to cross from Shittim towards Yericho, which is on the west. They went from east to west. Vayamdu ha'kayhanim nosei ha'aron beris Hashem becharava betocha Yarden, and the Kohanim stood in the dry land in the Yarden. V'chol Yisrael ovrim becharava, and all of the Jewish people crossed the dry land. Ad asher tamu kol hagoy lavoris Yarden. In other words, the point basically is that the Kohanim did not leave the Yarden until all of the Jewish people had crossed, because as soon as the Kohanim leave, the water is going to start flowing again. The wall, the imaginary dam, is going to collapse, and like the Yam Suf, whoever is in the river channel is going to be drowned, especially when you have a huge wall of water that is several miles high. That would be like a tsunami. So the Kohanim were instructed to remain in the Yarden until everybody crossed through.